When Tokyo starts flooding, the city does something strange. It does not just build higher walls. It does not simply wait for the rain to stop. It opens a giant concrete cathedral under the ground. And this is not a metaphor. Beneath the city, there is a real flood machine. It waits for one specific moment. The moment ordinary drains can no longer protect the streets above. Picture this. A storm rolls over Tokyo at night. Rain pounds the rooftops. It runs down glass towers. It floods sidewalks, roads, and narrow canals. The rivers begin to rise. And once those rivers rise too fast, every street becomes part of a countdown. Because in a city like Tokyo, flooding is never one problem. It is a chain reaction. One blocked drain pushes water into another street. One overloaded canal pushes pressure back into the system. One rising river can turn basements, tunnels, stations, and roads into traps. But what happens when the surface can no longer handle the water? Tokyo sends it underground. Deep beneath the feet of millions, massive tunnels begin taking in floodwater. Giant vertical shafts swallow the surge before it spreads. At the center sits a massive chamber. People call it the underground cathedral. But this place was not built for worship. It was built to buy time. Its towering concrete pillars do not hold up a temple. They hold back a disaster. When extreme rain pushes Tokyo toward the edge, this buried structure wakes up. It becomes the city's emergency lung. It inhales the flood before the flood can choke the streets. But here is the real question. How do you hide a flood defense system this massive? And when the water finally starts pouring in, where does it actually go? To understand where it goes, start on the surface. Tokyo is not just a city, it is a machine. Every roof, road, tunnel, drain, and river connects to another part. So when extreme rain falls, it does not fall into empty space. It enters a network already under pressure. At first, it looks normal. Rain hits the rooftops. It runs down buildings. It spills onto sidewalks. Then it rushes into gutters along the street. From there, the water drops into storm drains. Those drains push it into buried pipes. The pipes carry it toward canals. The canals feed into smaller rivers. And those rivers are supposed to carry everything away. But storms do not wait politely. When the rain falls too fast, every layer fills at once. The streets are pushing water down. The rivers are pushing water back. The canals are rising. The drains are slowing. And suddenly, the city is being squeezed from both directions. This is where urban flooding becomes dangerous. Not because one street gets wet, but because every escape route starts failing together. Water that should move away begins stacking up. A drain that worked 5 minutes ago becomes useless. A tunnel that looked safe starts filling from below. A train station becomes a concrete bowl. A basement becomes a trap before anyone understands the danger. And in Tokyo, there is almost no extra room. Millions of people live above this pressure network. Roads cross over buried pipes. Train lines cut through the ground. Shopping centers sit below street level. Parking floors, utility corridors, and subway passages all connect beneath the surface. So when floodwater enters the wrong place, it does not just damage pavement. It can choke the entire city from underneath. That is why timing matters. The system cannot wait until water pours through stations. It cannot wait until cars float through intersections. It cannot wait until people film the river from bridges. By then, the flood has already chosen its path. Tokyo has to act earlier. Long before the streets disappear, water levels are watched, smaller rivers are tracked, drainage channels are monitored. The system is looking for one critical moment. The moment normal flow is no longer enough. Once that threshold is crossed, the second drainage body wakes up. But here is the strange part. The goal is not to stop the rain. Nobody can do that. The goal is to steal time from the flood. A few minutes can change everything. They can decide whether water stays in a channel or whether it spills into a neighborhood. A small pressure drop can save a drain. One controlled opening can decide everything. Does the city manage the surge, or does the surge manage the city? Well, when the danger rises, Tokyo redirects the battle. The water is guided away from the vulnerable surface. It is pulled toward a buried system built for one purpose: take the flood before the flood takes the city. And this is where the concrete cathedral enters the story. Because that massive chamber is only one part of the machine. Around it sits a whole defense network. Intake points, giant shafts, deep tunnels, pressure chambers, pumps, outlets. Each part has one job. Each stage handles one part of the crisis. And if one stage is late, the next one takes the hit. So how does this flood machine actually work? The first layer begins before the city is overwhelmed. When smaller rivers rise too high, water is diverted away. It does not wait for the streets to become rivers. It starts taking water from danger zones early. That is the first move. Pull the surge away before it spreads. From there, the water drops into giant vertical shafts. These are not ordinary wells. They are enormous concrete cylinders buried deep below the city. From above, they look like openings into another world. But during a flood, they become the mouths of the machine. They take in water from different directions. They reduce pressure. They connect the surface flow to deeper tunnels below. And that pressure matters. Moving floodwater is not just liquid, it is force. It pushes, slams, twists, and surges. If too much water enters a narrow path, the system can fail. So the shafts help break that violence down. They give the water space to fall. They let it slow. They help it change direction without breaking the network. Then comes the tunnel layer. Deep below the city, massive tunnels carry the water across the system. Think of a normal drainage network like small veins. It works every day, quietly, and constantly. But during an extreme storm, those veins are not enough. Tokyo needs an emergency artery, a second route that only matters during overload. That is what these tunnels become. They move the flood away from crowded neighborhoods. They carry it under roads, buildings, and rail lines. People above may still see rain on the street. But below them, a separate river is moving in the dark. But moving water is still not enough. Because if that underground river arrives too fast, it creates another problem. You cannot just throw a flood into a chamber. You cannot hope it behaves. It has to be slowed. It has to be balanced. It has to be controlled before the final push. That is why the pressure chamber exists. This is the space people compare to a cathedral. It is massive, dark, and almost unreal. Towering concrete pillars rise from the floor. The ceiling stretches far above. It looks less like infrastructure and more like a buried cathedral. But every part has a job. Those pillars are not decoration. They support the structure. They stand against the weight of the city above. They help keep the chamber stable when water moves through it. And when the flood arrives, the chamber gives chaos room to slow down. The surge spreads out. The pressure drops. The water is no longer attacking one weak point. It is being held inside a space designed to take the hit. This is the real twist. The most dramatic room in the system is not built to impress people. It is built to calm water down. The chamber is not the final destination. It is a control room for force. It takes a violent surge and turns it into something engineers can manage. But even that is not the last step. Once the water has been collected, dropped, moved, and stabilized, it still has to leave. That is where the pumps come in. Massive pumping systems push the water toward a larger river route. From there, it can be released more safely. The city is not making water disappear. It is changing the timing and the route. And that difference is everything. A flood becomes deadly when water goes wherever gravity takes it. Downstairs, into tunnels, through doors, across roads, into power systems. But if engineers control the path, they control the damage. They can move water away from people, away from transit, away from the places where one failure triggers another. So Tokyo is not really defeating the flood. It is delaying it, redirecting it, breaking it into stages. First, take the water before it spreads, then drop it into shafts, then move it through tunnels, then slow it inside the chamber, then pump it toward a safer outlet. That is the layered defense. And it works because every layer buys time. The intake protects the street. The shafts protect the tunnel protects the neighborhoods. The chamber protects the pumps. The pumps protect the city. But sending water underground is only half the battle. Because the strangest thing about this system is not just its size, it is how invisible it remains. And that is the second paradox. The most important structure in a flood is often the one nobody sees. People notice bridges. They notice skyscrapers. They notice train lines, highways, towers, and glowing city blocks. But the systems that keep those things alive are usually sealed away. They sit below streets, behind locked doors, inside tunnels, under rivers, beneath places people walk past every day, and most of the time nobody cares, because unseen infrastructure is invisible when it works. A drain is just a drain, a pump is just a machine, a tunnel is just empty space below the ground, until the storm arrives. Then that forgotten machinery becomes the difference between normal life and total gridlock. Think about what a city really depends on. Not just roads, not just buildings. It depends on movement. People have to move, trains have to run, power has to stay on, emergency vehicles need open streets. Hospitals need dry basements. Signals, servers, pumps, and elevators need protection. But floodwater does not care about any of that. It follows gravity. It takes the lowest path. And in a modern city, the lowest path is often dangerous. That is where the most important systems hide. That is why Tokyo's buried flood channel is not just a storage tank. It is a second line of defense. When the surface begins to fail, it gives the city another layer, another route, another chance. In clear weather, it looks almost unnecessary, a giant empty chamber below the city. But during extreme rain, that emptiness becomes its power. Empty space is what gives the flood somewhere to go. So what is its real value? It is not just holding water, it is holding back time. And in an urban flood, time is everything. A few minutes can decide if a subway entrance stays dry. A few minutes can decide if traffic keeps moving. A few minutes can decide if people evacuate calmly or panic in rising water. The system does not need to erase the storm. It just needs to slow the disaster. Just enough for the city to keep breathing. That is the first strategic layer. Time. The flood channel buys it by taking water early, before it spreads, before it reaches weak points, before one flooded tunnel becomes 10 blocked routes. It gives engineers a window, it gives pumps a chance, it gives the city room to react. The second layer is pressure relief. Tokyo, like every old city, is built in layers. New towers stand above older pipes. Modern train lines cross older drainage routes. Roads, canals, cables, stations, and utility tunnels overlap everywhere. Each part was built for a certain amount of stress. But extreme rain does not respect old design limits. When too much water arrives at once, the older system reaches its edge. That is where the flood channel becomes a backup artery. It takes the extra load. It pulls water away from vulnerable areas. It stops smaller channels from carrying more than they can handle. Instead of letting pressure build until something breaks, it gives the force another path. And then comes the third layer, control. This may be the most important one. A flood becomes dangerous when water chooses its own route, down staircases, into stations, across roads, through electrical rooms, into basements, under doors. Once that happens, engineers are no longer controlling the flood, they are chasing it. Tokyo's storm control system changes that. It forces the water onto a designed path. It takes a chaotic event and turns it into a managed flow. The city cannot control the sky. It cannot tell the clouds to stop. But once rain touches the ground, Tokyo can decide something important, where some of that water goes next. That is the real twist. The concrete cathedral is not built to defeat nature. It is built to negotiate with it. Not by being stronger than the storm, but by being ready before the storm reaches the worst places. And that changes how we should think about cities. The future may not be saved by taller towers, or wider roads, or brighter skylines. It may depend on the structures nobody photographs, the tunnels nobody enters, the chambers nobody remembers, the machines that only matter when everything above them starts to fail. Because when the next extreme storm arrives, the key question may change. It may not be how high the water rises, it may be whether the city has somewhere hidden to send it. Above ground, Tokyo may look almost untouched after the storm. The lights come back on, trains keep moving, people step over wet pavement and continue their day. But beneath them, something enormous has just happened. A buried machine has taken in the flood. It slowed the water down, then it pushed the danger away. Most people may never know how close the city came to trouble. That is what makes this place so strange. It is one of Tokyo's most important structures. Yet it was built to be forgotten. Not because it is small, but because its success is silence. No panic, no flooded stations, no citywide collapse, just rain, pressure, and concrete doing its job in the dark. And maybe that is the future of survival in modern cities. Not always the tallest tower, not the brightest skyline, not the newest road. The safest city may not be the one that looks strongest. It may be the one with the smartest system hidden underneath it. Sometimes, the thing that saves millions is buried deep below them, waiting for the one moment when everything above starts to fail. So as storms become harder to predict, here is the real question. Will future cities be saved by what we build above the clouds, or by the hidden cathedrals we never see?